Are you ashamed of your past? Are you ashamed of your flaws? Have you ever been so shameful that you hide from your friends, your family, your own self, and even God? Today, we talk about those moments where we feel like we're not good enough, work too hard to be loved, and even isolate because we feel like we're not worthy enough. In this episode, we will uncover the truth that we don't have to earn God's love because He loves us and accepts us exactly as we are.
Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
Yellow.
So this week we were talking about the topic of competition and also shame, self-shame, self-blame, how we kind of cover up sometimes our emotions and our failures with a lot of blame, like blame it on myself, not good enough. But the crazy part about it is so much of the time it's invisible and you don't even realize that you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that is attached to shame, the hidden shame. You don't really know when you have it or when it has the hold or the power on you. And I feel like we might approach God differently because of all the shame. You know, we might feel so shameful of the things we've done in our past or, you know, parts of ourselves that we're not maybe proud of or have the shame of. And then when we approach God, we just expect Him to have that same outlook on us as well. And so it's like you stay hidden.
I feel like shame can almost be like an illusion of armor. What it does, it's we bring ourselves lower so that we can't be hurt when other people try to bring us low.
Wow. So it's almost like if I blame myself, if I put myself down, if I take all of the responsibility for everything that ever happened in the entire universe, that's me. If I do this, then you can't say anything to me because I've already covered it.
It's almost like fake protection from rejection, I'd say. Because I feel like that's where it comes from. You're already like, oh, well, I'm a failure. I already know that. You don't got to say it. You're already too afraid of rejection, so you reject yourself.
Wow. I never thought of it like that. Telling yourself all the things that, you know, all the bad things, all the self-criticism, all the self-hatred, the worst of the worst. So that if anybody does reject you or discourage you or say something mean towards you that might hurt, you're like, well, I already know that. I'm good. You can't hurt me.
Wow, you can't hurt me. It's almost like shaming ourselves prevents us from falling victim to other people's blame. I've already shamed myself, so what is there for you to blame me for? And if you do, I'm prepared for it. I think in a sense that does connect to God because we're shameful of ourselves. So the expectation is that, well, since I'm ashamed of me, I'm sure He must be blaming me too. But so much of it is in here. It's invisible. We don't recognize that that's what's happening. It makes me think of gym class in elementary school or something, you know?
I have to say there's a situation that really happened today with me. And I'm in charge of something for a group of people. And I've been putting out a lot of feelers for getting a lot of opinions and, you know, kind of having to be the leader in it all. The moment I give out a suggestion, I already make a list of all the things that they could possibly think negative about. This is too much. This is too expensive. She's this, she's that. Like, I actually did that today now that I'm sitting here realizing it. I've made the list of all the negative responses that I could have gotten from these people. And now I'm just sitting here and they're all silent. And their silence to me says all of those bad things. So then if they say it, I'm like, yep, I agree. Wow.
So it's, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. The self-blame. And then you're projecting and preparing. Like you said, it's building in this armor up around ourselves in order to be safe and to not have to worry about rejection because I already know what you're going to say about me.
Mm-hmm.
The analogy where it's like, I've already lost everything. What else is there I can lose? What can you take from me if I already gave everything I have away?
It's almost like you're below me mentality, I think. It's a matter of us not measuring up. It was always mysterious to me that at the Last Supper, Jesus said to his apostles, he said, I no longer call you servants. I now call you friends. And he takes it further eventually and makes it family. But I always was confused by that. And I think it's as though like the role that he wanted to have with the apostles, with us, was one of love and respect and beauty, as opposed to tearing down and competing and competition and self-loathing. Like, I think it was more of like, no, I don't want us to be like this. It doesn't have to be a competition. It can just be a relationship, a connection, a way of feeling as though you matter and you fit. I think that might be why he wanted it to be more. And we sometimes, not realizing it, and maybe not necessarily with God, but certainly with each other, and obviously probably with God, we have a tendency to make it something else. Not as beautiful, more like, I have to work for you to appreciate me. I have to earn your love, instead of it being like freely given.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's almost like you got to earn it, like working to earn it. I've seen myself do it with school. I get a low grade on something, and then I'm like, now I got to work extra hard, put in double the amount of work make myself even more tired than usual just because I got one bad grade. Mm-hmm. And then it's just constant shame after shame after shame. Trying to prevent the possibility of having that loss again.
Failure. Yeah, I'm thinking of giving up too, from our previous episode when we were talking about the discouragement and the negative self-talk even prior to something happening is a self-protection too, to make sure that like, oh, well, I already knew this was going to happen. I knew I wasn't going to be good enough anyway. And then we give up. I'm thinking of the situations where you were saying how I already know. I've already blamed myself enough, shamed myself enough, so you can't hurt me. But then if they do, yeah, they can hurt you. But I feel like I could see myself taking that step back and being like, all right, well, whatever. All right, it's on you then. Like, or anything like that. Like I could see myself giving up. I could see myself retreating, even though I've told myself those lies already to shame myself or blame myself. If they agree with it, I could see myself isolating, like retreating back.
Wow, so it becomes isolation then.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's mainly because we have a tendency to want to prove ourselves to everyone. And you see it in boxing too. I mean, of course you would. It's a combat sport. It's a sport in general. That happens in a lot of sports. What are you doing this for? Is it for the fun of it, or is it to prove that you're worth it to other people?
Yeah, I think that's so common in like athletics. I think we see that all the time. Like I said, it's as simple as gym class. I'm thinking especially of when I first had my first son. My mom had offered to come over and like help out or whatever, and I was grateful that she came in the beginning, especially because it was like my first time having a kid and I wasn't sure what to do. But I could remember preparing myself to be like, no, I don't want you to come over. I don't want anyone to come. I need to be able to do this myself. I have to be able to do everything myself. I have to be able to set this up. I can't rely on you. I don't want to rely on you. You know, it's you do need to learn. You do need to do all of those things. But it was almost, if I look back at it now as like from a different perspective, it was almost obsessive. Mm-hmm. It was like, I have to do this by myself and I can't fail. It was like this set up of like preparation for the failure, but making sure everything was in line so that it could never happen. Mm-hmm. And then if it does happen, like, who am I?
Mm-hmm. I've talked about this before with the, being the younger sibling, and you're always told you're the most spoiled. So I find myself always trying to reject any, like, being driven to the bus stop or anything. Mm-hmm. I'm always like, yeah, no, I don't want it. I want to do it all myself because that's what I'm told how my siblings did it. That's how I'm told everyone did it. They did it by themselves. So if they didn't need help, why should I?
Wow. I think that there is a bit of comparison to other people. If we compare ourselves to other people, and then that develops maybe into a competition of something that we think we should have or something that we want to have but we don't, but someone else has it. And then we find ourselves in like a competition. Well, okay, well, if they have that, then well, I have this. And like I have this like bully analogy. Like if you maybe a bully, you know, you've learned that they're the ones with actually the most insecurities, and they're the ones making fun of the people with whatever. And it's like their bulliness, I don't even know the right word, is like their own self-protection. And it's like our shame being inside, or all the things that we feel like we're not good at or we don't deserve, like being driven to the bus stop, like to like, you know, defend that. There's this that I'm really good at, or there's this that I have, or there's this that I'm perfect at. But all of it, the shame included, is also an illusion and not real, and not the way we actually are loved by God.
Yeah. I could see it. Like we come as servants, we come as slaves, we don't come as sons, and we don't come as daughters. He doesn't ask that. No. He wants us to come as family, as children, as his. He doesn't want us to come as we come as servants. We make ourselves servants. We don't believe that we're worthy. And I feel like the prodigal son story fits that so well, because he was going to leave before he was asked to go. He was like, I'm not even waiting for you to tell me to leave. I'm just going to go. Not only am I going to go, I'm going to go and make sure that we are completely done, because I'm going to ask you for my inheritance now, which, you know, you're not really supposed to give at that time, especially in that time. That means that his father would have been dead. So he was basically like making it like, okay, you're going to be dead to me and I'm going to be dead to you, and we're completely severed. So it was like the severing of this relationship. To me, I could see that shame all over it. I'll reject you first. You won't even have that opportunity. And we don't usually read from the Bible on here, but I really do want to read this Bible verse because I love this part, because I think it really exemplifies how God views us. So when the son was far off, and eventually he came to himself, and he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am not worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, felt compassion, and ran and embraced him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fatted calf, and let us eat and celebrate. For this, my son was dead, and now he is alive again. He was lost, and now he is found. And they began to celebrate. And I feel like that story exemplifies everything that we were saying. It's like, how many times did the son say, I don't want to be your son, I'm your servant. I don't want to be your son. I don't want to be your son. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. And the father, I love how the father was like, no. He didn't even wait. He ran. And that's what God wants to do for us too.
We're kind of like the sheep, and then God's the shepherd. When we go astray and we come back, we shame ourselves, calling ourselves stupid for leaving. But what he does is, once we chase him, he chases us back. That's a term I always hear you saying, Mom. So no matter how many times we fall, it's if we get back up, that counts.
Yeah.
And go back to him. You know, I almost have an image of myself and just people in general, like walking up the altar to him, walking up the aisle to the altar to him, like almost with their heads down, you know, in shame, and like walking with that. I know this is what I did. I know this is what I did. I know I'm not worthy. I know I'm not worthy. Like that constant, just, I heard the word punishment. I mean, no matter how many times I hear the prodigal son story, there's always something different that comes out of it. That's why I love hearing the gospel and the Bible so much, because over and over again, but the thing that stood out to me in that was he didn't wait for his consequence.
No.
he's like, I'm going to punish myself before I even get there. So this is my punishment to me. I know how badly I messed up and this is what I deserve, and I'm going back and I'm saying, all right, you don't have to tell me. I already know what I deserved or what I deserve. And the Father says the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And even I feel like sometimes too, even when we do have the encounter and we do learn that, we don't have to hold all that shame, even if we feel the forgiveness of God, or even if we feel the love of God and the erase of that shame, there's still inner work inside to let that shame go for yourself. It's one thing to have the knowledge of it synced together from you to God, and that knowledge is a beautiful experience, but it's really, really hard to get there.
I think getting there takes the relationship. How do you learn to trust other people? You learn to trust other people by creating and cultivating a situation of trust, a situation of openness, a situation of I can listen to you and I can tell you my real truth without the fear of rejection.
Sometimes I know for at least me, I don't know if it's for you guys too, but sometimes when going to like reconciliation, I constantly feel that guilt. Like, I can't believe I've done this. Why should I be forgiven? Am I worth it? Should I just run away again? Should I hide from him? It's almost like you're so afraid of his wrath because you think he's going to punish you. Meanwhile, all he wants to do is see you again.
Wow.
And I think that relationship too comes with time. Spending the time with him, spending time in prayer, spending time listening to Hallow, or developing relationships with spiritual people with you, and doing that together. Like, it really is about the encounter with him. Like, that has to be repeated, because first of all, it's not the first time we heard it this week. And how different it is, and the difference between just knowing the rules, like, okay, I have to go to confession to do this, so here's all my sins, and like, now I'm gone, and God forgave me and I did what I was supposed to do.
It's
but
like a checklist.
Exactly. But was your heart in the confession, like, was your heart feeling it, saying it, and then walking out there different? Because did you have that servant to son switch when you do something like that? And it doesn't just happen in confession. It happens all the time with the encounters with him.
It's funny because when I taught religion, I could remember I always asked the kids when I taught religion, I was always like, just out of curiosity, how many of you are actually here because you want to be here? How many of you come to religion because you feel like you wanted to know more about God? You wanted God to be in your life? And I would be like, no judgment, like no judgment here. Like, because if I'm honest with you, when I went to religion when I was your age, I was not in it because I wanted to. I went because my parents told me I had to, and it was just about rules. And I remember when I gave them the freedom, there wasn't a single hand that would go up that would tell me that they were there because they wanted to be. And I was like, good. Like, thank you for just showing me exactly where it is that you are. I spent that whole time when I taught religion on the encounter, on the meeting of God, on understanding, like, this isn't I'm not going to go over the prayers. I'm not going to go over, like, we'll do prayers. We will do that. But I want to go over the relationship. I want you guys to meet God, because once you meet him, once you have that type of an experience where you realize, like, wow, I matter this much, it changes it. It becomes the encounter. It's not rules. Rules don't save anybody.
No.
Sometimes we think that he's there but not here. You know he's real, but you question his authority, his power, his love for us. If he's actually the man he says he is, the God he says he is, or if he's just some, like, divine being out of our reach.
Are we so shameful of our own selves, of our own woundedness, of our own weaknesses, that we don't even want to know that truth? That we actually...
Embarrassed.
Exactly. That we actually hide in that.
One of the things that I always did with the kids was I would always share real encounter stories of how God impacted me. That was how I would get them on board with acknowledging like his existence. And one of the stories is coming to me now because you guys talked about reconciliation and confession earlier. And I remember I had been away from God for a very long time. When I first went back, I had heard at a mass one week, oh, maybe next week you guys can go to confession. It was like a special day of the year. And I was like, confession? I was like, oh God, I haven't done that in like forever. And I've done some things, but I was like, but I'll go, I just didn't go with any kind of an intention. I really wasn't looking to check a box. I was just going because it sounded like, well, I do feel peace when I'm here, so I'll give it a shot. And I will say this, that there was such an encounter in that experience. And I think it was because I didn't go following rules. I didn't go, with any type of an expectation except just like an opportunity to kind of like let it all out. And I remember it was like a first-year priest. It was like he was like a baby priest. I was like a 20-year-old. And I remember telling him all my things. And I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but for his penance was that I needed to spend time with my grandmother. And I was like horrified because at the time I didn't have the best relationship with my grandmother. She wasn't somebody that I really got along with. She wasn't getting along with my older sister, who she had always gotten along with. So I was like, what is wrong with this man? And I decided, because it, obviously I had no shame at that moment, to tell the priest, no, I will not be spending time with her. And I don't know why you're asking me that. I didn't say anything about her in this confession. And she's not nice. And he was like, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know. I have to do this. And he was like sticking to his guns. And I was like, I think I was trying to intimidate him, but it didn't work. There's this rule follower part of me that is like, oh my God, now I have to actually do this. And I was like, fine, this poor man. So I left confession with this determination to spend time with my grandma. And she was wonderful to me. Like, we just spent time together. We did all these things together. And like 6 months later, she ended up passing away. That was my first encounter. Like, that was confession to me. Like, confession was an opportunity to step into that box and to hear something that made no sense to me at the time. But I'll never, ever, 20-something years later, I will never forget that experience. And those were the types of things that I wanted to share with my kids at religion, because I didn't want it to be about rules. I didn't want it to be about, checking boxes, even though I did check some boxes, but I wanted it to be like, no, God is real. Mm-hmm. He exists and he loves you. You're like a child to him.
And that knowledge, it came from the priest's mouth, but it was prophecy from God.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're in there, you do, I have heard people say to me a whole bunch of times, like, why am I going to go tell some guy my sins, And it's like, that's not what it is. Yeah. First of all, it's going there for you. It's saying it out loud, which
it's an unburdening.
That releases everything. And then the encounter does happen. Yeah. An encounter like that. Like you said, you weren't talking about your grandmother. Yeah. He didn't even know. And he was like, I just have to tell you this, and you feel seen.
Yes. I felt so seen, and I felt so, I mean, at the time I wasn't thrilled with him at all, but afterwards, the gratitude that I had for it, I always like to be clear about that. That's my experience. That's one of my experiences. I know sometimes it's very controversial. Sometimes the conversation of confession, it's not everybody believes it. And I'm not here to tell anybody else that they need to be what I am, but it is what I am. And as a part of my faith journey, that experience was really something that changed my perception of that whole experience. And it was just something that God really used for my benefit. I mean, I had that opportunity to be with my grandma.
That's beautiful. It doesn't have to be in confession too. I'm thinking about telling a friend those moments, those things that we are so shameful about. We keep them hidden. And even,
Roni. This is Roni. This is our special guest, other dog besides Sunny this week.
My tiny miracle was going to be that the dogs are so quiet, but here she is.
So quiet and sweet.
Roni distracted me. What I was saying was, even just telling a friend about maybe something that you're shameful of is another way to unburden yourself. So if you're not at that point of, once a week confession or once a month confession, which whatever, it's like, again, I'm not telling you have to be who I am or do what we do, but the unburdening of that shame. And it could start with just telling somebody,
Yeah.
you know,
It's taking what's in the dark and bringing it into the light.
Into the light.
It really just gives like revelation and a little bit of freedom too, because it, I think, opens up the door to remove some of that shame that we sometimes feel in those circumstances.
Yeah. I'm kind of fascinated by like the rules and the heart thing, because it's something that I heard a priest say once years and years ago. He said, the rules don't mean anything unless you have heart. And heart meaning encounter, heart meaning relationship with Jesus and God. And it's fascinating how once the heart does have that encounter, that you understand the rules, and then you can grow and you can transform and you can do better. And maybe those shameful moments don't feel as heavy, as hard, like you're able to bring them out more, you know?
Unburdening.
The relationship with God is like a relationship with a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you gotta build it up first, build it up on love, of course. And then the rules and the foundations come in to play. Like a romantic relationship. You know you don't want to cheat, so you don't. And I feel like that comes after you fall in love with the person.
Wow.
I see trust also. I don't know why I keep thinking of you. You talk about your coach analogy a lot, like how like it took you a while to trust your coach because you were maybe putting other circumstances on him, and then eventually could see with so much clarity how much you trust him now.
Yeah.
And I think your boxing has improved because of that.
When we experience the shame, because I'll tell you, I've had a lot of shame with boxing. I mean, the other day sparring, it was like I wasn't doing too well. And then, you know, I became angry. I became like a machine, like how I was when I wasn't having fun with it, when I was just filled with anger and hate. And so I came out and I caught myself like mid-round, and I was like, whoa, I'm definitely not right now. I gotta, you know, start getting back into the gist of doing it for fun, doing it for love. And so I managed to catch myself, but it's almost like once you experience it enough, you'll start to catch yourself in the shame. It's like so hard to catch it at first, but once you do, it gets easier and easier if you ever do it again, which you will, because we're human.
Yeah. It's with me being the perfect parent. That's like one of the things that I feel like I'm better able to catch myself at now. The need to make sure everything is settled, need to make sure everyone has everything that they need. And that has gotten so much better over the years. But it's something I think that we all struggle with. It could be with being the best teacher. You know, when I think of when I have to get ready for meetings, I have these meetings I have to do every single year. And it's almost like there's a part of me that cannot rest or be okay until those meetings are over. Because in my mind, I have to get it right. I have to make sure everything's in order. I have to make sure I'm so prepared. And the inability to perform in that way, there's a part of me that still really struggles with that. And the best part of it is that this year when one of my meetings came, I actually had to leave school on an emergency, and I didn't even get to attend the meetings. Another teacher had to do it for me. God was like, ha, look at you. I gotcha. You know, it's pretty crazy.
It's when the shame takes over, or we're afraid of the shame, or we're living in the shame. It's the performance part of us kicks in, and it's just like go, go, go. And like you said, the motor, like I'm hearing all the words, but it does remind me of, I think I did share this one time as a teacher. I would a lot of times stop at church on the way home and just to pray. And, you know, years ago I would sit there, and if I had a bad day at work, or I didn't feel like I did my best as a teacher, or I was good enough, I would sit there and I would manically try and plan how I could be better the next day. And, over time, I'm like, oh yeah, that was better, do that lesson next time differently, or maybe have a little bit more patience for the tough kid in class or things like that. But it's getting rid of that performance mentality. And it does take time. No one says you have to jump into the deep end and understand it all. Like someone could tell you Jesus loves you your whole entire life, but until you actually know it, the words don't really matter.
No.
until you know.
I think it's connected to love of self. I think when we love ourselves, when we are more gentle with ourselves, when it's like, okay, yeah, I did make that mistake again for the 7,000th time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Tomorrow I'll just try and do better.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's that taking a deep breath and just releasing it and just allowing yourself to just recognize I'm not perfect, but I'm not a servant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a daughter. I'm a son. I'm a child.
The world doesn't revolve around you. You make one mistake, you shouldn't shame yourself for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just be gentle.
Be gentle.
Any shout out ideas for anybody this week?
I want to say our new listeners and our new followers and just new people. I feel like you have sparked some inspiration in us that is allowing us to grow. So anybody new listening to the podcast or subscribe to any of our channels or checking out our social media, thank you.
Yeah. And I also want to give a shout out to Michael and Kate. They are so consistent with listening and just supporting and all around just being there all the time. And I really do appreciate them. So that's my shout out for the week.
I love it.
I guess my shout out could go to Dana for, taking me to mass last week and then going out to breakfast with me.
I love that.
Yeah. It was such a nice time. And it was so nice to, have someone there with me to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thank you, Dana.
Dana again.
Dana. She's going to be like, forget it. She's going to buy t-shirts. All right. Tiny miracles for the week.
Tiny miracle time.
Well, I guess that was my tiny miracle, but I do have another one.
Okay.
It was like, we have like a 17 page review packet for Spanish, and we had 2 days to do it, which was going to be it was going to be due at the end of Friday, today in class. But for some reason, she decided to extend it and actually was like, you know what? If you guys are good, I'm going to take 2 pages off the packet that you could just not do. I somehow got more time, more freedom, more flexibility. So, that's always nice.
I love that. My tiny miracle today is I had a project that my students were doing in class this week and they needed poster boards. And I miscounted how many poster boards we would need, and I was short 1. And I looked at my co-teacher like, what the heck? How am I going to find a poster board? And I called the art room, and the art teacher was like, yeah, sure, I got one. What color you want? And it was just like, oh my gosh, you had one more poster. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
My tiny miracle this week is my sister-in-law, Caitlin. She had this really beautiful reflection on last week's podcast that she had sent. And I have so much gratitude, and it just gave me so much inspiration for my own self. So my tiny miracle is Katie.
Katie. Thank you, Katie. We love you.
All right. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this episode if it did anything for you. And thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to our 2 dogs that were here with us today, Miss Roni, and of course, you guys know Mr. Sunny.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
See you.